You know, um, when you watch a really skilled stage magician, the whole trick basically relies on one incredibly simple concept.
Misdirection.
Exactly, misdirection.
Yeah.
They make this like huge, flashy, dramatic gesture with their right hand.
Right.
So you completely miss the very quiet, mechanical thing that they're doing right in front of your face with their left hand.
Because human attention is, it's a finite resource.
Totally.
If you force the audience to focus entirely on the complexity of the performance, they physically cannot process the basic mechanics of the illusion that's happening right in plain sight.
Yeah, they're just too distracted.
Exactly.
So today we are doing a deep dive into a highly provocative, deeply skeptical presentation that basically makes the case that we're all falling for the ultimate geopolitical misdirection.
It is a fascinating argument.
It really is. The creator of this source video looks at the escalating war with Iran, the sudden closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the exploding gas prices, and basically says, stop looking at the flashy right hand.
Right.
Stop buying into the narrative that this is some sprawling, wildly complex web of global players trying to figure out peace.
Yeah, the explosions in the Middle East, that is the flashy hand.
Right, exactly. And the left hand is, well, it's a slow, calculated dismantling of your daily freedom.
So the core premise we're unpacking today is that this entire crisis is basically a mechanism designed to usher in a controlled collapse.
The controlled collapse.
Right, a way to pave the road for centralized global management of everyday life. Now, just to be crystal clear as we dive into this.
Yeah, we need to set the ground rules here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This material is urgent, and it is intensely controversial. Our goal here isn't to validate these theories or, to pick a side in some global conflict.
Right, we are not taking sides.
Not at all. We are putting on our skeptical glasses to impartially deconstruct this specific framework, just so you, the listener, can understand the mechanics of the argument being made about modern war and government overreach.
Because, if the reality on the ground actually matches what this presentation claims, the gap between what we're being told and what is actually happening it's jarring.
It's massive.
Yeah. So, to understand the magician's trick, we first have to look at the baseline reality. And right now, the baseline reality is a total economic shockwave.
Oh, absolutely.
The Strait of Hormuz is completely shut down.
Which is, it's really difficult to overstate in terms of global impact.
Yeah.
The Strait of Hormuz is this 21-mile wide bottleneck between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman.
Right.
And historically, about 1/5 of the world's total daily oil consumption passes through that narrow, streaky water.
1/5. That is huge.
It is. So when tanker traffic basically goes dead in the water there, the math hits immediately.
Yeah, the video points out that oil has hit a 4-year high. Gas prices at the pump are literally doubling in a matter of weeks.
Right.
Inflation, which, we were all told was cooling off, is roaring back to life.
Oh, yeah, it's back.
And because of that, the Federal Reserve is pivoting. They aren't lowering rates anymore. They're expected to raise them well into 2027.
And then, you layer on the military rhetoric, which is at an absolute boiling point right now.
Oh, completely.
President Trump has issued a 48-hour ultimatum threatening to completely obliterate Iranian nuclear facilities and desalination plants if that strait isn't reopened.
And Iran's counter threats are, well, they're fascinating, really, because they aren't just military.
No, not at all.
They are targeting the absolute core of the modern American economy. They are threatening to destroy Microsoft, Amazon, and Palantir data centers all across the region.
Right.
They are literally targeting the cloud.
Which is a highly sophisticated asymmetric warfare tactic. You don't just bomb a runway anymore.
Yeah.
You blind the digital infrastructure that runs the logistics, the intelligence, and the global financial clearinghouses.
It's terrifying. Yeah. But here is the massive contradiction that the video highlights. Despite all this apocalyptic posturing, the official narrative we get on television is one of, total overwhelming control.
Right, the whole everything is fine routine.
Exactly. Officials are going on air saying the enemy is crippled. You have figures like Pete Hegseth claiming that the skies above Iran are totally controlled.
Yeah.
That victory is effectively a done deal.
And that official narrative, it just collides head-on with an open-source intelligence metric called the Pizza Index.
Okay, yes. I had never even heard of this before reading this material, but it is such a brilliant concept. Explain how the Pizza Index works.
It's great, isn't it? It's this unofficial but historically very accurate metric used to track crisis levels in Washington, D.C.
Right.
It dates back to the Cold War and the Gulf War.
Hmm.
Basically, when you see a sudden massive spike in late-night pizza deliveries to the Pentagon, the CIA, and the State Department,
Yeah.
it means thousands of staff members are working extreme overtime.
I mean, you don't order 70 pizzas to the Pentagon at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday unless you are managing a rapidly deteriorating, highly volatile global crisis.
Exactly. And according to contacts in special forces that were cited in the presentation, the pizza index in DC right now is absolutely off the charts,
Wow.
which lines up perfectly with the fact that thousands of U.S. Marines are currently being deployed to the Middle East.
So let's just look at that contradiction for a second.
Yeah, let's unpack it.
If government officials are confidently claiming that the skies are controlled and the enemy is degraded, why is there this, panic buying of pepperoni at the Pentagon?
Right.
And why are thousands of Marines suddenly deploying into a combat zone?
Well, the presentation argues that this disconnect is basically a fundamental feature of modern war propaganda.
How so?
The public is intentionally fed a script of optimism. The media reports that 50%, 60%, maybe even 80% of Iran's missile launchers have supposedly been destroyed.
Right, but simultaneously, Iran is actively firing long-range ballistic missiles.
Yes, they are.
I mean, they are striking the joint U.S. base on Diego Garcia, which is all the way out in the Indian Ocean. They're striking near Israel's Dimona nuclear facilities.
Exactly.
The arsenal is clearly operating from deep underground silos that our intelligence simply hasn't neutralized.
And this is where the video draws a very sharp, very deliberate parallel to the messaging playbook used in 2022 during the early days of the war in Ukraine.
Okay, yes, this was a massive light bulb moment for
Yeah.
me. The creator tracked headlines from outlets like the Daily Mail and the Telegraph back in 2022.
Right.
And week after week, they claimed Russia was completely destroyed, that Putin had literally run out of ballistic missiles. And now, if you look at those exact same publications, they are running the exact same headlines about Iran.
It's copy-paste.
The video actually quotes a tracker from Moon of Alabama showing this rolling sequence of identical, overly optimistic claims.
Because it serves a very specific pacification purpose.
Yep.
By feeding the public simplified talking points about an easily defeated enemy, you prevent the population from asking harder, more systemic questions.
It's like, okay, it's like a pilot coming on the intercom and saying, you know, folks, we've hit some minor turbulence. Just sit back and relax.
Yeah.
While you, sitting in the window seat, can clearly see that the left engine is totally engulfed in flames.
That is a very apt analogy.
The pilot isn't lying to fix the plane. They are lying to keep you in your seat so you don't panic and rush the cockpit.
Exactly. Because if the public realized the war wasn't actually wrapping up, they would start asking where the pressure from this closed Strait of Hormuz is going to vent.
Right.
And that brings us to the core thesis of this whole framework. The pressure doesn't vent.
Okay.
It is actively harnessed to create a controlled collapse.
Wait, I need to push pause here.
Sure.
Because I understand how a blocked trade route causes supply chain chaos and gas spikes, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But how does this presentation make the leap from a severe geopolitical bottleneck to a global intentional controlled collapse? I mean, that feels like a massive jump.
It does feel like a jump, but the leap makes sense when you define what they actually mean by controlled collapse.
Okay, define it.
The video is very careful to clarify this. A controlled collapse doesn't mean society wakes up tomorrow in a cinematic, post-apocalyptic wasteland.
Right, no zombies.
Right, no Mad Max. It means a slow, managed reduction of your daily life. It's the institutionalization of scarcity.
Okay, so less Mad Max, more bureaucratic strangulation.
Precisely. And the video points to Southeast Asia to demonstrate what the early phases of this look like right now in real time.
Yeah.
Because those nations are so heavily dependent on imported energy moving through the Strait of Hormuz, the shockwave hits them first.
Right.
In Thailand, the government has already activated emergency measures. They are scrambling to ramp up coal and hydropower, and they're actively telling citizens to stay home to conserve the national energy grid.
And in the Philippines, I mean, they have legally shifted government offices to a mandatory 4-day work week.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not for, like, work-life balance. It's simply to keep cars off the road because there literally isn't enough petrol to go around.
Exactly. Pakistan has taken it even further. They are shutting down schools for 2 weeks and drastically slashing fuel allocations for all government vehicles.
Think about what that actually means for a second.
Yeah.
Like, for you listening, think about your own commute tomorrow.
Yeah.
What happens to your job or your kids' education if your local government mandates that you can only drive 3 days a week because the National Reserve is empty?
It changes everything.
Paying double at the gas pump isn't just an annoyance anymore. It is a hard restriction on your physical mobility.
Right.
Your consumption is suddenly being monitored and dictated by the state because of this external crisis.
But here's the thing. Populations that are accustomed to Western liberties, they don't just naturally accept that level of restriction to their independence.
Oh, of course not.
If you tell a population they can't drive, they will revolt.
Yeah.
Unless they have been conditioned.
Which brings us to the bridge stress test analogy from the video.
Yes.
If you want to know how much weight a new bridge can take, you don't just guess.
Mm.
You drive progressively heavier trucks over it until the concrete actually starts to crack.
Right.
And the video argues that the blueprint for our current societal compliance was stress tested very recently.
Very recently.
Specifically, starting on March 11th, 2020.
The COVID-19 pandemic declaration.
Yes.
The presentation makes a highly provocative claim here. They argue that regardless of the medical realities of the virus itself, the global social response to COVID was a practical, massive-scale trial run for compliance.
A trial run.
Yeah, it was a test to see exactly what populations will tolerate under a state of sustained, persistent fear.
They used China's QR code system as, like, the prime example of this.
Oh, absolutely.
During the pandemic, citizens had to scan digital QR codes just to physically unlock the doors to office buildings or shopping malls or even their own apartment complexes.
Mm-hmm.
You had to hand over your geographic and health data every single day just to ride the metro. The video calls it a massive live test of digital gatekeeping.
And the critical insight there is that this infrastructure didn't just get dismantled when the pandemic ended.
Right.
The argument is that the permanent systems of control are being aggressively built out right now, hiding behind the smoke of the current geopolitical and energy crises.
Misdirection again.
Exactly. The video breaks this down into 3 pillars of a new centralized architecture: money, mobility, and biology.
All right, let's start with the money pillar because the mechanisms here are genuinely staggering.
They are. The presentation focuses heavily on the death of the petrodollar and the rise of programmable digital currency.
Right.
For decades, the petrodollar system meant that global oil was priced and traded in U.S. dollars. This forced every country on Earth to hold U.S. dollars, which obviously gave America unprecedented financial dominance.
Sure.
But right now, Japan is settling oil transactions outside the dollar entirely.
And China is rapidly expanding the digital yuan. They are explicitly authorizing 12 more banks to handle it as a cross-border strategy to completely bypass the U.S. financial system.
And it isn't just an Asian phenomenon either.
No.
The European Parliament is heavily backing a digital euro, aiming for a rollout by 2029. And in Mexico, the government is currently enforcing purely digital payments for major transportation networks.
Wow.
Meaning you physically cannot use cash to participate in certain transit systems anymore.
Okay, I want to make sure the mechanics of this are totally clear for everyone listening.
Mm-hmm.
When this presentation talks about a central bank digital currency or a CBDC, we aren't just talking about, like, Apple Pay, right?
At all.
Or swiping a debit card.
Right. No, a debit card is just a digital representation of analog money.
Hmm.
A true CBDC is programmable money.
Programmable.
Exactly. It has conditional logic baked into the code itself.
Wow.
So imagine a digital dollar that physically cannot be spent on gasoline if your digital ID shows you've already hit your monthly carbon quota.
That is wild.
Or funds that automatically expire if you don't spend them within a certain time frame to, stimulate the economy.
Right.
It lays the rails for a world where access to your own labor is centralized, monitored, and made conditional based on your behavior.
Which feeds perfectly into the second pillar, which is mobility.
Yes.
Because if they control the money, the next logical step in this framework is controlling what you can do with it, specifically where you can go.
This is where the video points to the aggressive rollout of 15-minute cities in places like England,
Mhm.
which use zoning and digital tolling to heavily restrict vehicle movement outside of your designated local sector.
And you look at California enforcing incredibly strict electric vehicle mandates, right? Pushing
Yeah.
to ban the sale of new gas-powered cars by 2035. Consumers don't necessarily want them. The power grid struggles to handle them, and there's massive political pushback.
But look at the mechanism of the crisis.
Yeah,
When you close the Strait of Hormuz and artificially drive gas prices through the roof, you essentially force the population into the electric vehicle infrastructure the government has been pushing all along.
right. The pain at the pump becomes the catalyst.
Exactly. It makes the electric vehicle look like the only viable lifeboat. Even the U.S. Treasury's move to ease oil sanctions on Iran, a country we are effectively at war with.
Yeah, that makes no sense on the surface.
Right, but it's framed in the video as a desperate, managed intervention to calm market panic just enough to keep the system afloat while quietly depleting strategic petroleum reserves.
It's just layer after layer. And finally, the third pillar, biology and surveillance.
Yes. The presentation points directly to U.S. airports right now. Under the justification of chaotic, understaffed, and stressful travel environments, the TSA is rapidly pushing digital biometric scans.
Oh, I've seen this.
They are scanning faces and retinas to clear security.
And it's always sold as a benefit,
Yeah.
Like to go digital, it's so much more convenient. We'll move you through the line faster.
Yeah.
The crisis creates the friction,
Yeah.
and the permanent loss of privacy is offered as the convenient modern solution.
Which brings all three pillars together, really. A system where your programmable money, your restricted mobility, and your biometric identity are merged into a single database.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate for a second here.
Go for it.
When we stack all of this up, the digital yuan, EV mandates, TSA eye scanners, the DC pizza index, the closed Strait of Hormuz,
Yeah.
it paints a picture of this all-powerful, globally coordinated, omniscient cabal, right?
It does.
But isn't it highly possible that these are just, messy, reactive government responses to very real, chaotic emergencies?
Sure.
Like, maybe there isn't a grand orchestrated master plan. Maybe bureaucrats are just panicking and slapping digital band-aids on problems as they pop up.
Well, the video actually anticipates that exact counter-argument. Yeah. The creator explicitly concedes that perhaps not every single detail is written down in some smoky backroom master document,
Okay.
but their core logic relies on the undeniable directionality of the outcomes. They argue that whether it is meticulously planned or just opportunistic governance, every single crisis pushes the dial in the exact same direction.
Less independence for the individual, more centralization for the state?
Exactly.
The ratchet effect.
Yeah.
The dial only ever turns one way.
Right. They point out the historical pattern. 9/11 gave us the Patriot Act and normalized permanent mass surveillance.
Mm-hmm.
The COVID-19 pandemic gave us digital health tracking and normalized the concept of societal lockdowns.
Yeah.
And now the crisis in Hormuz is paving the way for energy rationing and programmable digital currency. The direction of the policy pressure never, ever wavers.
Which is why the video insists that the sprawling complexity of the Middle East conflict is basically the ultimate smokescreen,
The misdirection.
right? The actors, the historical grievances, the religious tensions, those might be incredibly complex. But the functional result for you, the citizen sitting at home, is incredibly simple.
Yeah.
Your freedoms are weakened, and new forms of state dependency are introduced as the only viable solution to the emergency.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today.
We really have.
Let's trace the arc of the framework we just unpacked. We started with the jarring reality of a blocked Strait of Hormuz and a spiking DC pizza index.
Right, physical indicators of a severe escalation that directly contradicts the optimistic, pacifying media narrative we're all seeing on TV.
Exactly. We explored how modern war propaganda, repeating the exact same scripts used in Ukraine in 2022, is designed to keep the public from asking hard questions.
It would look at how the resulting energy shocks are already causing early-stage managed collapse in places like Southeast Asia through severe rationing and restricted movement.
Finally, we dug into the presentation's most urgent warning, that the compliance stress test of the COVID era is now being weaponized to fast-track a permanent centralized system. programmable digital money, heavily managed energy consumption, and biometric surveillance.
It's heavy stuff.
It is. And if there's one primary takeaway from this source's perspective, it's to be fiercely critical whenever you hear the phrase short-term pain for long-term gain.
Oh, they use that all the time.
The creator points out that media outlets frequently use this exact framing during crises, but you have to ask yourself, what permanent control grids are being installed while we are distracted by the short-term pain?
Right.
The emergency powers are always sold as temporary, but the surveillance state they leave behind is permanent.
It all comes back to that stage magician. They want you looking at the flashy explosions, the complex web of foreign actors,
Yeah.
the dramatic 48-hour ultimatums.
Yeah.
They want you looking at the right hand.
Exactly.
But here is one final unsettling thought for you to chew on, building on the mechanics we've talked about today. If every major historical crisis leaves behind a permanent, invisible layer of infrastructure, like the TSA using airport chaos to seamlessly merge your digital ID with your physical biology, what permanent infrastructure is being quietly locked into place right now? When the dust finally settles on this global energy shock and the war is just a paragraph in a history book, what new invisible cage will you find yourself living in?
It's a question you might want to answer before the magic trick is finished.
Until next time.